Well, the president has just finished his address to the nation, and was that a speech? I mean, it felt almost like it was a bad, fast-talking infomercial with a lot of anti-immigrant language just intertwined in there. It was extremely loose on facts, and he basically tried to shout his alleged accomplishments at the American people as if that was going to convince them that they were all true. I'm going to get some reaction and experts help analyzing what he said in just a moment. But first, I just want to quickly fact check just a few. I mean, there were so many in there. We were working as quickly as we could, but just a few of the president's most blatant falsehoods. Tonight, Trump announced checks for $1,776 for U.S. troops. First of all, Congress controls the power of the person in the country, not the president. So if that happens, that is Congress sending those checks, even if Trump puts his name on them. But that number, $1,776, is also kind of interesting because an analysis from the Yale Budget Lab estimates that as of November, Trump tariffs have cost Americans an average of $1,700 per household this year. Trump also claimed that when he took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years. That's not true. The truth is that inflation had been declining from its peak of 7% during the pandemic. But since Trump took office, it has basically flatlined at 3%. It was 3% in January, and it's 3% today. Okay, Catherine, let me just start with you, because there were so many economic falsehoods in there. It was like Micro Machine, if people know that reference, man meets Pinocchio, just talking about the economy and shouting at the American public. What did you note in there that stuck out to you as the most glaring things?
Oh, man, that was like a manic Gish Gallop, if anybody ever did high school debate. There were a lot of lies per second there. I took some notes. So among the first things out of his mouth was a lie. He said that he inherited the worst inflation in 48 years. Absolutely not true. Inflation when he took office was about 3%. Today it is about 3%. So definitely not the highest in 48 years, and also no different today than it was at the beginning. It had been coming down, and then it bounced back up after Liberation Day. He talked about bringing prices down. That obviously has not happened. He had a bunch of statistics in there. I have no idea what the provenance of them it was. He said things like turkey prices have come down by a third. He said that they're building factories and plants at records he hasn't seen, neglecting to mention that we have had 7 consecutive months of manufacturing job losses.
Things are out of President Trump's control. When you're on the campaign trail, right, or if you're in the courtroom with your lawyers, right, you can walk out, you can go yell into a microphone, and you can go and try to convince the masses that you are being politically targeted for prosecution, right? You can go and bat Joe Biden over the head at Sleepy Joe all you want. And that's what he's done the last couple of years. But now he's the president of the United States, and he's got a 4-year term. It was his own Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, that back in July was very specific. He said Biden's first quarter is behind us, and growth is already accelerating. Congratulations, America. We're just getting started. That was this summer. The Trump administration now, with President Trump's own speech tonight, are suddenly bringing Joe Biden and blaming him again for the economic situation that Americans find themselves in. And when I say it's out of his control, right, I was talking a week ago at an event that he did in Pennsylvania, where I was talking to his own supporters about what grade they would give the economy. There were D's, C minuses, B minuses. That's the state of America. And the president used, with a lack of hubris here today, an attempt to try to convince Americans that their lives and the situation of this country is better than so many people are actually expressing.
Welcome back, guys. When I watched this address, the first thing that came to my mind was that it did not feel like a serious presidential speech. I felt more like a fast, rushed sales speech. Almost like an Infomercial where someone keeps talking quickly so you do not have time to think. Jen Psaki called it a bad, fast-talking Infomercial, and honestly, that description fits perfectly. The tone was aggressive, loud, and defensive, not calm or reassuring like you would expect from a leader speaking to the whole nation. Right from the start, there was a lot of emotional language, especially about immigrants. Instead of focusing on solutions or facts, the speech leaned heavily on fear and blame. That kind of language may fire up a political base, but it does not actually solve problems. It also distracts people from checking whether the claims being made are true or not. One big One big announcement was about sending checks of $1,776 to US troops. At first, that sounds generous, but here is the reality. The president does not control the money. Congress does. So, announcing checks like this without Congress approving it is misleading. It creates the impression that this is already done when it is not. What makes this even more ironic is that $1,776 is very close to the amount economists say American households have lost on average because of Trump's tariffs. So, on one hand, he promises money, and on the other hand, his own policies are costing people money. Then there was the inflation claim. Trump said he inherited the worst inflation in 48 years. That sounds dramatic, but it is simply not true. Inflation had already been coming down and was around 3% when he took office. It stayed around that level. Even the Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell said inflation is somewhat elevated, not out of control. Saying worst in 48 years is not just aggregation, it is false. He also talked about grocery prices, saying he is working to bring them down. But his own agriculture department reports show wood that food prices are rising faster than inflation. So people watching at home might think relief is coming when the data says the opposite. Promising lower prices will policies push prices up is not leadership, it is confusing. Gas prices were another big claim. Trump said he brought gas prices down to $1.99 a gallon. That may have happened briefly in a few places during unusual conditions, but nationally it is not accurate. The average price was about $3.11 when he took office and about $2.91 at the same time of the speech. This is a small drop, not the dramatic success he described. Catherine Rampell described the speech as a manic gish gong, and that is a great way to explain it. It was a rapid stream of claims, numbers, and promises delivered so fast that fact checking becomes difficult in real time. When politicians do this, it is often intentional. If you say enough things quickly, people remember the feeling, not the facts. There was even a strange claim about turkey prices dropping by a third. No clear source was given and no context explained. This is another example of throwing out a number without backing it up, hoping people will just accept it. On job and factories, Trump talked about building factories and plants at record levels. What he did not mention is that manufacturing jobs have been declining for 7 straight months. Yes, there is investment happening, especially in AI data centers, but those do not create as many long-term jobs as traditional factories. Investment headlines sound good, but workers care about actual jobs, not press releases. Tax cuts were another major claim. Trump said he delivered the largest tax cuts in American history. That is not true. And when you look at tariffs, they actually function like a tax on Americans. According to conservative economists, his tariffs are one of the largest tax increases as a share of the economy in over 30 years. So, while calling them strong or patriotic, regular people end up paying higher prices. He also claimed he could bring down interest rates and mortgages cost by appointing the right person to the Federal Reserve. That shows a misunderstanding or mispreparation of how the system works. The Fed chair cannot just decide to lower rates on command, and mortgage cost will not fall unless more houses are built. Promises like this sound good, but they ignore basic economic reality. Immigration was a huge part of the speech, and it was filled with harsh rhetoric. But studies show that restricting immigration at this level could reduce the framework by millions and slow economic growth significantly. Less workers means less growth, higher prices, and more strain on the economy. That part is rarely mentioned in speeches like this. Vaughn Hillyard made an interesting point about how this speech reflects Trump's personality. It felt like a truth social post turned into a national address. Even the atmosphere at the White House, with plaques and slogans, reflects that same style. This was not a unifying movement, it was a campaign speech delivered in prime time, interrupting regular programming, which is unusual unless there is a major crisis. On tariffs, Rampell made it clear Americans pay them, not foreign countries. They push prices up, hurt jobs, and create uncertainty. And if the courts strike them down, it could leave a huge hole in the federal budget. So either way, there is a cost. In the end, the fast shouting delivery said a lot. It felt defensive, like someone trying to prove success rather than calmly showing it. Strong leadership does not need to harsh or yell. It relies on facts, clarity, and truth. And when you strip away the noise, what remains here is a speech full of claims that simply do not hold up under basic scrutiny. Thanks for watching my video. I will see you in the next video.